Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the lounge. Stefanos told me he's going to be a few minutes late today, but got more explosive information for you guys. Stuff you don't hear every day, stuff you'll never read in the newspapers, and it's very important to you and your other fellow Canadians. So share this out. You know, the first thing that's lost in the fog of war is the truth, and that's what we bring you on the lounge. We got two special guests coming in tonight momentarily. Longtime associate, and I like to call him a friend, Pastor Artur Pulowski from Calgary. Welcome to the lounge, Art. How's it going?
Thank you so much, Ed, for having me back on your show. And yes, you're absolutely right. We got lots of information, especially about a so-called justice system in our beloved nation in the province of Alberta. But your next guest, the one that we're going to talk, to, he has the unbelievable way of making that presentation. So I'm looking forward to what he has to say.
One little correction. Would you call it a justice system or an injustice system?
Well, that's why I said in quote, so-called justice system, right? Because it's completely injustice, is corrupt to the core. It has nothing to do with justice. And that reminds me, of course, growing up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of communism and socialism, the same story, the same mockery of justice, the same show trials that we're going to talk about today.
All right. And do you want to introduce our next guest, please?
Yeah, Shane. Shane is a good friend. He is an amazing human being, and he loves justice. So he has taken upon himself this burden, in my opinion, of showing people, uncovering, and bringing forth to people's attention what is really happening behind the closed doors in the judges' chambers, where pretty much judges can do and say whatever they want. And again, he knows the stories. He was covering the story of the Quds 4, Quds 3, and then he is covering what is happening with Derek Reimer, that has been imprisoned, arrested multiple times, on house arrest still for, are you ready? For uncovering a pedophilia craziness in the city of Calgary and challenging the grooming of the children behind the closed doors with adults. But Shane, I don't know anybody that can articulate what is happening still in the court system better than Shane. So Shane, the floor is yours. Bring him on.
Hi, Shane. How's it going? I'm going to
It's
switch things
going
up a bit.
excellent. It's going excellent. Glad to be here as a critic of the judicial system or the injustice system. Thanks, Ed, for taking an interest in the Derek Reimer show trials. Thank you, Art, my friend, for asking me to join you tonight.
Okay, we know you're on a times restraint, so go.
All right, so let's just start with the history of this one case. But before I do that, I'll point out Derek Reimer has been subjected to 5 arrests, 111 days in the remand center, which actually is equivalent of 1.5, about 170 days jail sentence is the equivalent of that. He's been subjected to, after 5 arrests, bail hearings that have led over this arc of almost 3.5 years to ever increasing bail conditions that have the effect of suppressing his free speech. But we're here today to talk about one set of bogus charges: mischief, that's section 430, and causing disturbance, section 175. This was the prime mover of the government's, of the state's action against Derek Reimer for his effective, peaceful, and lawful protest of the grooming of children, known here as Calgary as Reading with Royalty. The prime mover, and I'll just give some dates here. So the 25th of February in the year 2023, Derek Reimer walked into the Seton YMC Library Complex. He walked into the Reading with Royalty room, where there were assembled some dozen children and about 38 adults. You just look at that number and you know that there's something wrong. It's remarkable in trial how the Crown's witnesses under oath reveal the structured indoctrination and training of children. So they assemble the toddlers and infants on a rug that I will call the grooming rug. closed caption video within the library that was presented by the Crown as evidence shows 2 library employees carrying the sacred rug through the library into the sacred shrine known as the adult programming room. What are children there? I think most statisticians would tell you, when you look at all situations where you've got a dozen children on the floor being watched by 38 adults, some of them who could not be their mother or father, there's something wrong with that picture. Derek Reimer went in there and interrupted the grooming of children. When he left that room, forcibly extracted, physically assaulted by 2 drag defenders. Some might remember seeing that footage because Tucker Carlson helped make it famous. Police were eventually called. They found no reason to press charges against Derek Reimer, who had complied with their request to leave the library or you will be arrested for trespass. Jody Gondak, then the mayor of Calgary and one of the masterminds of the Reading with Royalty program, tweeted no more excuses. Then Chief Constable Mark Neufeld of the Calgary Police Service clicked his heels together, and within days, members of the hate crimes unit began showing up at Derek Reimer's door to harass and intimidate him, and within a couple more days, he was arrested. So these 2 charges, which I am calling bogus, and I'll give you some reason for that determination, were the prime mover of 3.5 years of prosecutorial misconduct. So this is 23rd February 2025. September 2024, the trial judge, Justice Bradsham, found Derek Reimer not guilty, both counts. In May of 2025, now at this point, the Crown had appealed, and we're talking about the provincial Crown. Matt Delatovich has been the primary mover as Crown prosecutor. He's a provincial prosecutor. He's a colleague with Stephen Johnston. They both were involved in the prosecutorial malice against the Coots 4. But a Crown from Edmonton came down to appeal, sat before King's Judge Nancy M. Carruthers. I'll just cut to the chase here. Video evidence that I will discuss that showed Derek Reimer being on the receiving end of violence. She admitted to us that she never watched the video. She sort of made a vague claim that she didn't quite have access to it, which could not have been true. And the fact of the matter is the Court of Justice, the lesser court, is a court of record. So that means that video was available to her on a thumb drive. She would have known that. I'm not sure if Carruthers was just gloating about the fact that I'm going to ignore exculpatory evidence, meaning evidence that would tend to prove the innocence of the accused, and just go with what the Crown had to say about that video. So that's May of 2025. And here we are in April of 2026, 3.5 years into this long process. Why has the Crown and the injustice system spent hundreds of thousands of dollars persecuting Derek Reimer? Because he is guilty of the heresy against state religion, gender fluidity theory, LGBTQI2S+, the chopping off of body parts in adolescence in the name of gender expression. And you might remember early in his career as basic dictator of Canada, circa 2016, Justin Trudeau began appearing in the ritualized street festivals known as pride parades. There's many pictures of him showing raising his hands to the heavens in an act of self-adoration, his tongue sticking out of his mouth in an obvious, suggestive sexual manner. Justin Trudeau was declaring himself the high priest of this state religion. That's why there's a pushback. Also to cover up what is obviously the grooming of children, indoctrinating toddlers and infants and pre-adolescents into drag, which is a code for gender fluidity theory, encouraging them down the road as adolescents to identify as the opposite sex, and thereby finding themselves under the knife of the Joseph Mengeles of the healthcare system. We're performing top surgeries, double radical mastectomies, bottom surgeries on boys and girls. Mostly girls are the target of this agenda, and they do that, and they're handsomely paid for it. So let's just back up here, and we'll go back to trial Judge Justice Bradsham's comments. Why did he find Derek Reimer not guilty? So we'll go to the charge of mischief. And Justice Bradsham made this comment. Miss Gray continued to sing to the children. Miss Gray is a library experience manager at Seton Library who was basically running the show that day in the adult programming room. According to her testimony, it's likely that she was sitting in one of 3 chairs at the front of the little shrine, the little programming room, right between the 2 drag kings. Drag kings? I thought this was Drag Queen Story Hour. More on that later. And according to her testimony, she is the one who leads the children in what she calls a quieting song. And we find out from her testimony also, this is a very structured program. They bring the children. There's adults in there who are not parents of the children. Apparently, they're there just to enjoy the gratification of watching toddlers and infants play dress up in front of the drag king or drag queen. Don't mistake drag queen as having anything to do with the burlesque tradition of drag queen. When we hear from that community, they say, I would never do what I do in front of children. This is something very different. Again, the drag word is there to indicate transitioning to the opposite sex. And what Justice Radsham found from the testimony was, okay, Miss Gray continued to sing to the children after Derek Reimer was forcibly extracted from that room. As for the whole or the greater library itself, the library continued to remain open. Library employees kept doing their job. So you got to understand the heart and essence of the mischief statute of section 430 is that you have interfered or disrupted the normal use and enjoyment of any property, be it public or private. But here's another aspect to that. According to case law, now case law illuminates the statute, amplifies the statute, much like Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown's commentary on the whole Bible illuminate the word of God. And what the case law of higher courts sets is what's known as precedence. It's added to this. And the determination of the higher courts is that the act that leads to mischief must in and of itself be inherently wrong or unlawful. Justice Radsham just determined that there was no inherently unlawful, wrongful act on the part of Derek Reimer leading to mischief. Where the Crown's case is also weak is in the other charge, the section 175, causing disturbance. Now I'm going to go back into case law, giving you examples of what I meant by rulings of the higher court. But first, let's just talk about the essence of the statute, 175, causing disturbance. In its opening section there, it's basically talking about the disruption of the public peace, of the public peace in or near a public establishment that is caused by any one of these enumerated behaviors, enumerated because 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, and so on. So here's some examples of those behaviors: using insulting language, screaming or shouting. And so my point here is, let's now talk about, well, what is case law? We'll go back to 1974. We'll go back to Lawrence. That would have been the name of the individual, like R versus Lawrence, the Queen versus Lawrence. So according to Lawrence case law set in 1974, then the higher judge determined clearly the intention of this statute 175 causing disturbance was not to suppress free speech, but rather to preserve the public peace. And I'll explain why that is important. Number two, later on in the late 20th century, some more precedents were set. I'll go to Lowness, an often cited case. And the judge in the case of Lowness determined that if any these enumerated behaviors, understand that screaming, shouting, using insulting language, other than in the realm of political correctness, these are not in and of themselves crimes. But the Lawrence precedent established that when these enumerated behaviors lead to disturbance, they are criminal, or they are crimes, or they are unlawful. So you have to understand that screaming, shouting, using insulting language, these things are only crimes within this narrow context of the statute on creating disturbance. I'll talk about McLaughlin. And this is very interesting and totally counter to the last 4 decades of political correctness that begins on the campus, which is that which is offensive must be silenced. My feelings were hurt and it's my perceptions that matter. Well, according to McLaughlin, it's not enough that your feelings were upset or that people were fine. There must be a manifest disturbance. That means a disturbance that can be measured in objective manners. So these are very important precedences. Now I'm going to go to storied defense attorney Alan Hepner, famous throughout Canada. He is now representing Derek Reimer, and he has been very capable the 2 days of this retrial, this double jeopardy, Derek Reimer being retried for the charge of disturbance and mischief. Very capable, and in his cross-examination of the Crown's witnesses, it's very clear that Alain Hepner is very familiar with the case law. When you look at the conduct of Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich, at face value, it appears he doesn't know anything about the statute or the case law. But I submit to you, Matt Delatovich is capable, and the reason he appears to not know anything is that he knows he doesn't have a case, so there's no point relying on the case law. He goes to the fact that Derek Reimer was quoting the word of God. He's repeated that many times, whether it's at a bail hearing or one of these trials, including this trial at the Seton Library, the bogus charges stemming from that. So he'll mention the fact he was quoting scripture. In a bail hearing, he even tried to suggest that it was hate speech. Justice Pepper, overseeing that bail hearing, didn't go for that. But what Matt Delatovich is doing, since he has no case, he has to go to the emotions of his Crown witnesses, And therefore, we see this library experience manager. We see a mother who brought 2 small children to this event back in February of 2023, tearful on the stand, emotions welling up, even 3.5 years later, traumatized because a man came in to disrupt their enjoyment of watching children on a grooming rug perform dress up in front of a drag king. And Alan Hepner went with that to the point that he would ask them the question, so this was a very emotional experience for you, wasn't it? And they took that hook, line, and sinker. Yes, it absolutely was. And again, you wonder why, if Crown Prosecutor Matt Doladovich knows the statute, knows the precedences, knows McLaughlin, why didn't he counsel his witnesses? Don't make so much about your feelings. Go with the external the manifestation of a disturbance. He didn't seem to caution them about that at all. Why? Because he knows he doesn't have a case. He is gambling on this judge, and that remains to be seen, having an orientation towards political correctness. So in other words, he will accept the diluting of the statute, the ignoring of case law, the warping of law and language and logic in order to find Derek Reimer's guilty. I don't think that's going to work out in this case. So after 2 days of this trial,
Hang on.
Yeah.
I got to interrupt quickly. Stefanos, by previous case law, are the judge's hands bound? Yes or no?
So previous jurisprudence, stare decisis, call it what you will, what you want. When it is higher court ruling, the lower court's hands are bound. And that's that for that. They can't go around it unless they try to rule a complete different way. But in these cases, they can't go different ways. So yeah, their hands are bound by higher court rulings.
Okay, sorry. Let's go on, Shane, please.
And that's a great point. And this is the Court of Justice, and Justice Fradsham, who found Derek not guilty, he understood the case law. He's talked about all these things in his summary of the case and his verdict delivered in September of 2024. So he respected Lawrence, Lonis, and McLaughlin. I'll just mention the fact that when the Crown appealed Justice Fradsham's not guilty verdict, his acquittal, they tried to claim that he had made 7 errors in law. Nearly every point they presented was a lie. They said he ignored the Lonis test. That was not true. They said he acquitted on the basis of the fact, kind of a sympathy vote, that Derek Reimer had been pushed to the floor. I felt he never mentioned that. And then defense attorney Andrew McKenzie, who preceded Elaine Hepner, he did a remarkable paradigm shift. He said, okay, well, let's take that at face value, that Justice Fradsham felt sorry for Derek Reimer and acquitted him because he had been pushed to the floor by 2 early drag defenders. He just went with, that doesn't matter. He doesn't need a reason to acquit. He needs a reason to convict Derek Reimer. And frankly, the Crown didn't come up with one. So now I'm just going to round out the discussion of creating disturbance. Again, going back to McLaughlin, it's not enough that people are crying and upset. There must be a manifest disturbance. We have video footage showing Derek Reimer being pushed to his back, physically assaulted by these 2 gentlemen who are never going to see the light of day in courtroom. Neither are any of the drag kings. The state doesn't want the pointed edge of the grooming of children anywhere near the light of a courtroom. Derek Reimer decided to not press charges against these men. And this instant he was pushed onto the floor, onto his back, he got up to say, that wasn't very loving, was it, in a very calm voice. But then again, you have a Crown prosecutor saying, oh, he was, yes, I agree, he was pushed out of the room. And then he immediately began yelling. And so there's a little bit of problem. And that was the most honest of the Crown's witnesses. So you can do some extrapolation there out of 4 Crown witnesses. So my point here is that Justice Fradsham also said, I can't be sure why the men pushed Derek Reimer to his back. If they were offended by the content of his preaching in Reading with Royalty, the Reading with Royalty room, that has nothing to do with the statute on causing disturbance. It is content neutral. Screaming and yelling, yes, insulting language, that's a little different. But walking in there to say, this is a perverted grooming session, repent now, repent to Jesus now. If they were offended by that, well, I'm sorry, the law doesn't back up that this disturbance was caused by Derek Reimer, or that they were justified in pushing him to his back. The other thing, looking at the video, Justice Fradsham noted that really there was minimal disturbance, and you can see that on footage, oddly presented by the Crown as part of his case. showing a child still wandering around while this is happening in the Reading with Royalty room, returning to a table with her brother and her father. The son, whose back is to Derek, he doesn't even turn to look. At most, their attention was momentarily drawn to this act of violence. And for those reasons, Justice Fradsham landed on not guilty disturbance. There's no evidence before me why these men did what they did. And B, I cannot attribute this minimal disturbance that barely reaches the threshold of McLaughlin, of a manifest disturbance, solely to Derek Reimer. In its arguments against the defense lawyer Andrew McKenzie appealing the overturning of the acquittal in kind of a secretive webcast that nobody was really allowed to be in, but I heard portions of it. The Crown actually argued, Your Honor, it's too high of a threshold, that the judge has to be convinced that Derek Reimer was the sole contributing factor to an alleged disturbance. You've raised the bar too high. We could never convict him. This is basically a Crown prosecutor from Edmonton admitting they don't have a case. They don't have a case. Now, I'm gonna wrap it up now, and you may have questions for me. As a byproduct of watching the Derek Reimer political show trials, we get to find out how the state works, how its organs of pure state security, I'll use the term used in Germany in the 1940s, the Sicherheitsdienst, the High Office of State Security, how they function to spy and surveil political dissidents such as Derek Reimer. And that is accomplished by the Public Safety Unit and the Hate Crimes Unit. The Public Safety Unit, this is a Constable Weather who was spying on Derek, videotaping him, preaching at Country Hills Boulevard intersection on the Meridian. He passes that information on to the Hate Crimes Unit. So when there's a political target, the Public Safety Unit goes out and does their surveilling. Hate Crimes Unit also does surveilling, but they are handed a file with a name and a photo, and then there they go, trolling Derek Reimer's social media, for example. Constable Messenger of the Hate Crimes Unit testified a couple years ago that it's his job to search for hate bias on social media. Not really true, and I doubt very much that he has a hate bias meter. No, it's his job to target and surveil political targets. And it was also Constable Messenger who requested that the library, Seton Library, hand over a bunch of footage of Derek and his friends. So this is spying and surveillance and what is arguably now a basic dictatorship, although under Carney, we seem to be headed via the arcs of Bill C-2, Bill C-8, Bill C-9 to an advanced dictatorship. And now Acting Sergeant Howie appears to be on the case. This is another constable within the Hate Crimes Unit. This is an organ of pure state security.
Stefanos, any constitutional issues you may have with this case?
Depends if there was warrants or not to surveil them. And then, well, go ahead. You want to say something?
My thoughts exactly. To our knowledge, there were no warrants. It was just Acting Sergeant Howie requesting surveillance film from a camera that is across the street from the Calgary Court Center that showed Derek Reimer committing the crime. This is their words of conducting a preaching ceremony on the courthouse steps on a day he was doing the courthouse. So to our knowledge, no, there is no subpoena. There is no judge issuing a warrant. The Hate Crimes Unit just sends an email, makes a request.
Oh my God. So preaching on a corner is a hate crime now. Yeah, that in itself right there is a constitutional issue. And I heard you say something earlier about double jeopardy, even though we don't have double jeopardy in Canada, it's called something else. But is this what they done? He had been cleared and everything. They went rearrested him and brought him up on the same charges again.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, he was acquitted by trial judge Justice Fradsham in September of 2024. The Crown appealed this decision. Nancy M. Carruthers of the King's Bench overturned the acquittal in May of 2025. I'm using the term double jeopardy. I suppose that's more familiar in the United States of America, but just to point out, it's impossible there. It rarely happens in the United Kingdom, and usually only for capital offenses when the Crown discovers new evidence. There's no new evidence in this case, but the overturning of an acquittal can happen in Canada multiple times. There's no known limit to this.
But there is a Canadian version of double jeopardy, and it has been used numerous times, especially even with conservation authorities in Niagara. So that is a thing, and this is what I don't understand, why these constitutional challenges aren't being brought forward instead of making these people stand on on the stand again and get persecuted, not prosecuted, but persecuted a second time. I don't see why nobody's standing up for freedom of religion, for freedom of expression. It's all right there. You can go and stand on a street corner and preach all you like. I don't even know why Pastor Art's there with when he feeds everyone. They keep arresting him. That's insane. That's insanity. That's just crazy stuff all the way around, everywhere.
Well, time and time again, the judges are too complicit with their politically correct masters. They throw Section 2 into the trash bin whenever they can. And even if they don't determine that yes, there has been a disruption of Section 2, it is engaged, they'll come up with, well, this isn't the time or location or place for your free speech. And you raise a very good point, and I'll go back to the arcs of the brilliant cross-examination by Alain Hempner. Another thing he got the most honest of the Crown's witness to admit to. So Derek Reimer was preaching. He was expressing his charter-protected Section 2 rights of opinion. And that Crown, okay, I accept that. Yes, so that he's moving it in that direction. And I'll just point out that there have been constitutional challenges related to this matter, as Jody Gondek's infamous safe and inclusive access bylaw that her council brought about in the wake of Derek Reimer's successful protest, successfully shutting down more than a dozen of these grooming sessions. And basically, it gave the police the right to carry out biased persecution. It outlawed specific types of protests based on their content that they were opposed to, the LGBTQI2S+ framework of de facto law. That has been challenged by Larry Heather, who got himself arrested under that by being within 100 meters of a grooming session at a public library. It did go to the court. It's ongoing. But initially it was turned down, and we had a justice, I believe it was a Justice Barley, who ruled, yes, Larry Heather, your charter rights have been violated. The safe and inclusive access bylaw does impinge on Section 2. However, it would be too expensive. It would cost too much money for us to have to provide police to keep these factions separated. He's kind of buying into the narrative that our side is violent and dangerous and you need lots of police. So that's what's happening. They agree that the charter has been violated, but say it would be too expensive to preserve our rights. And the fact of the matter is...
So I hope that was appealed, because that's obviously an obvious error in law. So that better be getting appealed. I hope to God it is. And that bylaw itself should just be challenged and have that municipality gone back, hauled into court, and have a challenge, right?
That was Brendan Miller who handled that initial. Now, that was a constitutional challenge within the trial against Larry Heather. And it's interesting because Justice Barley understood what Larry Heather was doing. And he said from the bench, I get it, Mr. Heather. And of course, he's confessed to having violated it. But then there's the constitutional question launched. And he said, I get it. You felt that this was non-constitutional, so you deliberately violated it to bring about this challenge. I get it. But within the context of that trial, Barley ruled in favor. Yes, your free speech has been violated, but it doesn't matter to be too expensive.
Yeah, and what you just said there is what I don't understand why you would do that. Rather than go get charged, and then you have more of an uphill battle.
Okay, so let's just talk about the judges who are complicit in the prosecution of Larry Heather and especially of Derek Reimer. They got the memo. So let me give you their names.
Oh, all right.
Justice Shaw, Justice Karen Molly, Justice Shane G. Parker, Justice Nancy M. Carruthers, Justice Barley. They all got the memo. Folks, the grooming of children, LGBTQI2S+, the complicity of public libraries with Calgary Pride, if we're talking Calgary, this is the new state religion. They are untouchable.
Is that Justice, what's the name? Lucille Shaw? Is that who that is, or is that?
It's quite possible Justice Shaw is a sister judge. It's possible. I can't verify that.
And this is what, in Alberta, or?
Oh yeah, this is Alberta. This is the Calgary Court Center.
Right. So it wouldn't be Lucille. So let me see. I'm just trying to look up. I found another one, but it's in Ontario, and we don't want that one because obviously it's not the right one.
Justice Shaw is the one who found Derek Reimer guilty of breaching his conditions by.
So that's J.R. Shaw. that's who that would be that you're speaking of.
Yeah, she found him guilty of that preaching ceremony outside the courthouse on a day he was due in the court.
Crazy.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, well, and again, rather than go and get yourself charged, I just don't understand why they don't challenge that bylaw. Don't get yourself charged. Just bring a constitutional question onto that bylaw. Is it unconstitutional? And you end it there. Once you start getting charged, then you're looking at different aspects, and then this is where the judges decide they're going to get creative, especially if they're like supporting this, or maybe they're part of the alphabet crew themselves. I don't know, right? So maybe they were activists. We don't know this. This is one of the things I always say to anybody who's in front of the courts is always research your judge. Always do the deep dive into them. Research everything about them, because a lot of the times you find that they're in a conflict and they have to recuse themselves because maybe they were, the head of one of these boards or something, or maybe they were an activist and on top of it. So you always have to look at that kind of stuff. And I don't know what a family and youth judge would be doing sitting on this type of a case. It's kind of reminds me of the Cowton case, or Chowton, however you say it in BC. It was a family court judge sitting on a native, Indian treaties and stuff like that. They got no business there. They don't know anything about it. They should. They're the last person that should sit and judge that.
Yeah,
So it's
well made.
interesting.
Well made. So as I have to leave in about 7 or 8 minutes, if there are any lingering questions that you might want to ask me, I'm happy to take them now, but also happy to hand the torch over to Art Pawlowski here.
Yeah, go Stefanos. We only got a few minutes.
Well, I don't have any lingering questions. Those were the ones that I just said to you. That's what I heard somebody say something about being in the back rooms. That was done away with in 2009, I believe, 2010, and around there. They cannot do that. They used to have their little gatherings in the judges' chambers. That's been outlawed. They're not even allowed to do that anymore, at least in Ontario. I don't know about Calgary or anywhere else.
I will mention this just on the subject of the adult programming room, and this is different than what you're mentioning. The shrine in the library where the children are assembled on the rug and play dress up in front of the drag king or drag queen. So let me quickly add this. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich, much like Stephen Johnston down in Coots, because he has no case, he pads it with minutia, asking each witness to what was the layout of that room, and determining that Derek Reimer, he walked on against this wall and then that wall, and then he came back here. And that's not one of the enumerated behaviors of the statute on disturbance. It's not in there. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delatovich presents as a man looking for an unknown destination that he never quite gets to. In contrast, when Alan Hapner began his cross-examination with the MC directing that, the library experience manager, he says, now my learned friend has in painstaking detail painted a picture of the layout of the room. I'm not interested in that. When I walk into a reading with royalty room, what do I see? What are those men dressed as? He just goes immediate to the visceral substance of what children are being subjected to. And then we get into this convoluted speech of, well, they're not drag queens, they're drag kings. Alan Hepner says no judgment. What is the difference between a drag king and a drag queen? Though, are they male or female? Wouldn't answer the question. Well, outside of their drag persona, I don't know what they identify as. So here we go into the nonsense of gender fluidity theory. Again, Hepner is masterful. I should mention, this has now been adjourned to the 18th of September. I know a lot of people will interpret that, oh, this is lawfare, they're dragging it out. It's actually a good thing. It gives Alan Hepner time to prepare his final arguments. He's going to request a transcript to carefully go through the Crown witness's testimony, his cross-examination, and it's going to take about 30 days for him to get that transcript, so it has been delayed. It gives all parties concerned time to make their written submissions, make their written rebuttals, the judge time to read them all. So on the 18th of September, we're going to be attending that courtroom, excited to see what Alan Hepner has come up with when he walks in there to present his oral arguments.
So this, if I'm not mistaken, this was a female judge, the Justice Shaw?
Justice Shaw was the justice presiding over this one. is a man.
Okay. Because I just got another judge, which is not that judge again. This one is a male Shah. So see, there's multiple Shahs, so we have to make sure we get the right ones. This is what I'm looking at. And the male Shah is interesting because the Crown state assault charges against Calgary Justice John Shah. So I find that very interesting to see. I'd like to say protections, but I don't know the whole thing. So I'll refrain from saying anything on why. But it's interesting that you see this happens quite often too.
So, can you guys address, Stefanos, specifically the double jeopardy aspect of this? Can they do what they're doing legally?
No, he already addressed that, Ed. If you were listening.
Maybe you guys
In Canada, again, in the United States of America, never. In the United Kingdom, rarely. In Canada, all the time. And we're specifically talking about the overturning of an acquittal.
Yeah, if you go into an appeal, it's not a double jeopardy type situation. If it's an appeal, then no. But if you are acquitted and you're set free, and then they come after you with the same charges for the same crime, supposed crime, then it is, and that should be immediately met with a constitutional challenge. I just don't understand why they don't do it.
Well, that's up to the lawyers, I guess, isn't it?
Well, it should be the lawyers should be telling their client this. That's what like all of these Coots 4, all of that, or the all the Coots guys. There were so many constitutional challenges that should have been there, but they all chose not to, and they try to fight him in either a provincial court where you're guilty until you're proven innocent, instead of a criminal court where you're innocent until proven guilty. So I got a lot of questions, and I always question the lawyers first and foremost, because it's not like these guys don't know this. So this is why I always question that stuff.
Well, the only thing I can think of is maybe the lawyers aren't comfortable doing constitutional challenges.
And you may be absolutely correct. I always say make sure you get a lawyer that does the area of law that you want, rather than get a lawyer who claims to do everything. That's actually your most crap lawyer, is a lawyer that does everything, because they don't specialize in anything, and you're going to get poor results. But if you got a criminal lawyer and you're charged in a crime, but they should also have the aspect of constitutional law. So if you get a lawyer that does about 3 different areas of law, you're going to have a great lawyer. But to get one that's just straight criminal and don't know anything about the Constitution, well, then that shouldn't. You should dump him and go grab someone else at that point.
So politically, is Jody Gondek still mayor of Calgary?
No, she's been replaced as of the last election. That would be October 2025 by Jeremy Farkas.
Is that bylaw still in place?
Yes, it is. And the grooming of children continues in some libraries. In Saddletown, which is northeast and known for immigrants, a very large Indian and Sikh community. I walked into the Saddletown Library on a day it was taking place. Couldn't find the famous book written by celebrated drag author Little Miss Hot Mess, The Hips of the Drag Queen Go Swish, Swish, Swish. Couldn't find it in the library, saw no signs that within half an hour anything would be happening. So good for them. But there are libraries in the city where it continues, yes. And I'll just close with this comment. I went into Seton Library on a day that these grooming sessions were taking place. One of the Crown's witnesses, who is the supervisor, he lied to me when I asked, where are the books on transitioning children? No, as if we don't have them. Moments later, he took me to the stacks where this book was. In his dedication to the children, Mr. Mess writes, to all the little queens in training. So there you have the blatant admission. This goes way beyond reading books to children. This is about training and conditioning them into drag.
And it continues. That's all we've been talking about for the last few months on our show, is the pedos and how they get away with it and how they get lightly charged in court. And we're fighting back. And here we go again. It's even happening in Alberta. Didn't think
Absolutely.
Cowboys would put up with this.
So Ed, thanks for having Art and I here. Stefan, thank you for a lot of your questions. We're right on time and target and reminding me of stuff that I intended to bring up. Thank you very much for allowing me on your show tonight.
And we'll have to get you back on to give us more updates.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for all the information.
You betcha. Good night.
Good night. Art, don't go away. Hang on, what's going on here? Come on. Oh, no. That's better.
There we go. Crazy story.
So, okay, obviously this is politically motivated. Jeremy Farkas is now the mayor. I can't believe he made mayor. He only got like a few thousand votes last time when he ran against Kevin.
Well, he has been for the past few years very popular for a number of reasons. But I first want to talk about the conservative government because, you said, it triggers something when I hear stuff like this, that this even happens in Alberta. Well, you have to understand that Alberta is spearheading this for the rest of Canada. You have to understand that this craziness, they call themselves the Purple Mafia, and the headquarters, if you will, are in Alberta. And I can tell you the names of the politicians that are right now here in Alberta, city of Calgary, that are pushing this very, very hard. And if I would tell you the names, you would not want to believe me. You would just say I'm absolutely nuts. The pedophilia ring, the grooming of the children, the lowering of the consent if it comes to having sex with children has been on the work in Canada for the past 30 years. And the conservative government is pushing very, very hard behind the closed doors to achieve this. So we have to understand who is behind this political persecution and prosecution is not the Liberal government. And don't get me wrong, the Liberals are absolutely nutcases, and the NDPers are socialist, communist, Nazis. But conservatives are no better. This is happening, and people have to understand, and they get upset with me when I bring this topic to the front because they don't want to hear it. It's like the three monkeys. I see nothing, I hear nothing, therefore I will not say anything. But the truth is, we have to go back to the truth. If we care for the truth, if you don't care for the truth and you say, hey, just give me lies, or tell me what I want to hear, that's completely different show. But if we actually care to find out who is pushing this, if we care about the truth, we have to understand that the conservative government is spearheading this political persecution. You have to understand that the Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is the very one that is the boss of the Minister of Justice. She can put a stop to this. She can advise her prosecutors to stop this because it's not in the best interest of the population, of the society. Or at least she could come publicly and say, this is insane. I'm not standing for this. This is political persecution. This is religious persecution. There are so many ways to skin the cat, if you will, that she has at her disposal. She can do all kinds of bills that would protect us. And you have to understand that she did run, and she won on specific promises. She won that there is going to be an amnesty bill. People are yelling and screaming that she has no power, she cannot do it, blah, 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 blah. Of course, it's nonsense. She has the majority government. She could bring amnesty bill, full stop. It would end the COVID persecution. But she said she will do it, and then she flipped back, like she always do, and decided not to do it. And of course, the parental rights, and now the whole craziness with referendum. I don't know, guys, if what I feel right now, should I laugh or should I cry?
Yeah, you know what? You are the only person aside of myself that I've heard say about the conservatives. I've been exposing the conservatives over a year now and putting them out in the sexual, physical, and mental abuse at Robert Land Academy for over 50 years, involving the PC party, involving the Conservative Party, involving the Canadian military, law enforcement. This is how they got away with it for 50 years until we put an end to it. But you know what? You're absolutely right, Arthurs. You're absolutely right, because this is something, and people sit there and they scream, "Oh, we need the conservatives!" Rah rah rah. What does Pierre Poilievre want to do? He wants to, if he gets elected, he gets a majority, he's going to instantly suspend our constitutional rights. Why? For the next 5 years. Why? And this is why he says, so he can hold these guys in with no bail. Can you imagine the abuse that'll open the door to? You're going to have Derek Reimer, yourself, anybody else that does anything, in you go into prison, no freaking bail, no day in court, and you'll sit there literally as a political prisoner for the next 5 years straight. And people are just clueless. I think that's the worst of the worst, a huge dictatorship.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I didn't want to go that road, but let's just give people a little bit of facts, because I can imagine people screaming and yelling that we have to vote for the lesser of two evils, we have no choice, and this and that. I've heard it all. Of course, I have been involved in politics all my life. Poland, Greece, now Canada. I'm very active. I'm still a political leader of an entity here in the province of Alberta. So Stephen Harper, you have to understand, is the one that signed us into the WEF, the World Economic Forum. People don't know that. They think it's the bad liberals that did it. No, it was the conservative government. Also,
actually, hang on, it goes before him. It was Mulroney that was down in, I think it was Brazil.
Yeah, but globally was Harper that signed us and brought it to Canada. Then you've got Pierre Poilievre as the minister of Harper's government. He's the one that signed us into the carbon garbage stuff, the Paris Accord. It was Pierre Poilievre that did it. And the very man that was yelling, "Axe the tax," is the one responsible for the tax in the first place. I mean, it's absolute craziness, but people don't want to hear this. People don't want the truth. They want to be lied to. So now Danielle Smith is the best premier in the history of the province of Alberta. Many people would like to see her as the prime minister, and they completely ignore the truth about that character, who she is, what she is doing, what she was doing, and what is actually her intention. The parental rights, good, amazing, bravo. And then when you read the document, there is a section over there that gives doctors power to override the parents. So there goes your protections out the window. Then she brings the Bill of Rights. Bravo, that's amazing. She's the best of the best. And then you read, okay, she's bringing the crazy section that it can be overridden by the wishes of a corrupted pedophile judge, like in the case of Derek Reimer. So when you look at the whole craziness, there are some things that she says that are good. She does even some good things, and then it turns out in the end that everything is a show, everything is a theater against the people. So they are actively working against the people. So now we are talking about referendum, right? Independence movement that I see in the province of Alberta. Everyone, from the freedom era that didn't listen to me when I was warning them about Danielle Smith, I was telling them she's a flip-flopping politician. She did cross the floor. Danielle Smith crossed the floor from the Wildrose Party to another party because she was promised that she will be the deputy premier in the province of Alberta. And then, of course, Jim Prentice ditched her, and she lost her seat. And for that distraction of the Wildrose Party that never got back into power, she received 7 years, if I remember correctly, as a bonus to be the host of a very popular talk show. So we have to understand who are those players, what they are playing, what is the game. Most Canadians don't even know they're being played, that there is this Hollywood production unfolding in front of their very eyes. People like me, I grew up in hell. I grew up under a boot of a totalitarian regime. So when I hear those people, sixth sense, if you will, clicks in, and I feel it. And I can tell you, this is a liar. this politician is a flip-flopping pathological liar, that person is going to change his or her voice, depends of who pays more or where the benefits are. But Canadians, unfortunately, and I'm not bashing Canadians, I think majority of Canadians have absolutely no clue what is going on around them. They just want a paycheck. They just want to golf. They want to yell and scream at the hockey game. And they want definitely, I think there would be an uprising if the Tim Hortons would shut down. But Tim Hortons are open, everything is fine, and then they don't care. They got their hockey yelling, time. They've got their golfing. They got the restaurants open, and Tim Hortons' life is good. Everything is fine. Everything else, well, who cares? Pierre Poilievre comes on television in front of all the cameras and says to the Christians, says to the conservatives, I promise you, when elected, I'm going to keep slaughtering babies. I mean, he says that on television, that there will be absolutely no law, no change if it comes to abortion, because that's their policy. So my question to the Christians, my question to the conservatives is this. Are you not seeing what is happening? Those people are no longer conservative. Those are liberals. If you said their policy, if you outlined their policy 20 years ago to anyone in Canada, immediately they would say they're liberals or the NDPers. But right now, the bar is so low that every monkey can get elected. If you're perverted enough and if you have enough money, you will be elected. Like, my God, we have a circus right now in Parliament. It's just total insanity. But, you were talking about certain things, so I put it in my notes. You're talking about the backroom deals are prohibited in the province of Ontario. In Alberta, it's a norm. So, for example, in my case, the case of David Pawlowski, Arthur Pawlowski, and Chris Scott, the Whistle Stop Cafe owner, in that case, John Rook, the crook, as I call him, John Rook, he was the chief associate justice. He did a backroom deal with the police, with the Crown prosecutors, off the record, off camera, and he gave them the power to arrest 3.5 million or 4 million Albertans just because, without ability to defend themselves. He said, if you don't obey my orders, and again, you got to remember that deal was done closed doors, off camera. No one was allowed. We were not notified. We were named in a document, and our lawyers were not notified that this was happening. It was completely Nazi Germany, 1938, 37, or, communism during the Stalin era. Everything was done by those people. So, the same thing they did, John Rook gave them the order, the power to arrest anyone, because if you did not obey Alberta Health Services or the police officers or any wacko that said, I have the power over you, you would be arrested and found in contempt of his order. But David Gates, and again, I don't know if he's related to the psychopath in the United States, Bill Gates, but David Gates of Alberta, another crooked, lying judge. And, pay attention to what I'm saying, what Shane said. We are not afraid to call those people crooks and liars because we have documents that those people are crooks, manipulators, and liars. Those are liars. They should be arrested and charged to the fullest of the law. So David Gates of Alberta, I don't know what he got for this betrayal, but he gave them the power to override the Constitution, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Bill of Rights, and international human rights when the SWAT team, anti-terrorists, entered our church service. And they brought this contempt of court that was done by John Rook. David Gates, the judge of Alberta, gave them the power to enter our church service, church building, anytime they wanted to, and with whomever they wish to enter our church building. So they showed up with the SWAT team. For that, of course, as you remember, we got arrested in the middle of the highway. Then another crooked judge, Adam Germain, found us guilty on everything and gave us the compelled speech order. I mean, I can talk about those crooks forever. Those are crooks. Justice system is no longer justice system. It's a great injustice system filled with crooks, liars, and manipulators like Stephen Johnston, like Matt Delarovich, and others that have absolutely no problem to lie, to manufacture stuff, to make stuff up. For example, Stephen Johnston, the Crown prosecutor from the Special Prosecutor's Office here, like Special Gestapo of Alberta, again, under watchful leadership of the Premier Daniel Smith. So keep that in mind. All of those things are happening. The Coots 4, the Coots Trio, the alderman that was charged criminally for doing nothing wrong. He just negotiated with our CMP and the police. He was meant to go to when the police had a problem. He helped the police while he was thrown under the bus by the Daniel Smith. Of course, my case, the cases of other pastors, Chris Scott, and so many thousands of Albertans are still facing this hammer of the so-called Conservative Party under the leadership of Daniel Smith. But people don't care because people don't know. They don't want to know. So life is good. Let's vote for the Conservative Party, which they did, and life is going to go back to norm. Well, it's not going back to norm because Canada has fallen. Economy is completely destroyed in Alberta. So Ontario, you look at Alberta and you say, surely in Alberta is better economically. But what you do not know, that we have the biggest defaulting on credit cards within the Confederation. I'm sure you didn't know that. We have a huge number of foreclosures. We have a downtown that is half empty. We got everywhere you drive around Calgary for lease, for sale, for rent. If it comes to businesses, we are losing this province. Canada, Alberta is gone. Alberta is done. We are sleeping literally on one of the biggest resources of natural resources like oil and gas. And of course, our own government is destroying our own ability to prosper. So the off-camera, backdoor meetings are normal in the province of Alberta. And of course, the Crown prosecutors and politicians are using those avenues left and right. Also, we have to understand that they don't want the scrutiny. They don't want the people like you and others to know what's going on in a court. And so that leads me to what just happened to me on Monday. So for your listeners and viewers, you have to understand I'm still in court. My brother David is still in court. We're still fighting. You maybe you moved on with your life. We're still entangled with this corruption, trying to uncover what those crooks are doing, what they did, and who's behind it and why. I mean, those are the valid questions that we're trying to uncover. Me and my brother David, we're going to be grilled by Alberta Health Services in just a month's time. So
I had no idea that you were still in court. Because what was that last ruling? I think they had ruled against you on it, and then everything went quiet. It was all crickets. I never heard anything else anymore.
Yeah, because of the corruption of the media. Put it this way, I don't want to go there, but we have been betrayed and thrown under the bus by the media. They got what they wanted, which is the conviction. We appealed it. The Court of Appeal found me guilty. And again, you got to remember, I was charged criminally. I was charged as the first Canadian ever in the history of this country of terrorism for a sermon to a peaceful people in Coots in a private restaurant. I was charged with, with the terrorism, interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. I was charged with mischief over 5,000 and some 40, 50 other nonsense charges. So they kept me in prison, solitary confinement, metal cages, places on concrete, no water, no washroom. I was 5 inmates testified to our lawyers that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me in prison. I was kidnapped by sheriffs, and I could talk for hours and hours what happened in prison, but I wrote a book in prison, Lions Do Not Bow, for those people that are interested in the story and who was behind it, because I'm naming the judges, I'm naming the politicians who did this to us. I had about 10 different meetings from the Conservative government. Listen, from the Conservative government that tried to bribe me on about 10 different occasions from Smith's and Pierre's office. I had multiple things. I was offered $2 million to shut up. I was offered a land for the church. I was offered a seat at the government. They said, we will put your name in an area where historically always wins for us. We want you at the table. But what they wanted was, shut up, keep your mouth shut, don't talk about this. I was offered to be a chair, a government job, $250,000 a year if I would keep my mouth shut. Then when they realized Artur Pawlowski is not for sale, well, they tried to blackmail me and assassinate me. They lit my house on fire. People don't know that. They literally lit my house on fire in the middle of the night. And the chief firefighter came and they said, we had a very similar situation a week ago. The whole house burned down. Our children were sleeping. And he says, you're very lucky because, you caught this. And actually the neighbor did very quickly, and they put the fire speedily. So they unscrewed tires in my pickup truck to kill me while driving. The tire just took off on its own. I had pistols. I had knives on me. I had Antifa in my backyard. I had them breaking into our church 3 times, vandalizing our church for months. They lit our church on fire, burned down our children's bus. They stole our equipment. They stole cameras. I mean, people know that. They do not know that story. What happened? I was kidnapped by sheriffs, taken to Edmonton, hundreds of kilometers away from my home, and I was placed in a max spot. For those that are not as seasoned criminals like I am, while max spot is for the most dangerous terrorists in the country. And then I was taken to a psych ward, Soviet style, without the evaluation of the doctors, without even knowledge of Alberta Health Services, completely illegally. I was taken and I spent a week in a psych ward. So I wrote a book there, and the book was confiscated by the Canadian government already 3 times. They confiscated the manuscript. And it was only thanks to our lawyer that smuggled the manuscript from prison. And we sent it to United States, and they published the book, Lions Do Not Bow. If you guys are interested, it's on Amazon.ca for Canadians, Amazon.ca, Lions Do Not Bow, and Amazon.com, Lions Do Not Bow. So I encourage you to get it. Then you will be able to understand that all the political parties in Canada has betrayed us. And if I was your king, those people would be charged with treason. But going back to the story, I as you can imagine, I have a beef with the so-called justice system, with the crooked judges and the crown prosecutors. Matt Delatovich is from the same unit, from the Gestapo unit of Stephen Johnston, that was my crown prosecutor, that accused me, lied to the judges, lied to the media, lied to the public, that I cost Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages because I gave a sermon to our hurting Canadians. Those people are insane. They're mentally challenged. Those are insane people, but they can get away with it. So when Derek Reimer, my friend, started to be charged, I took notice and I decided to advocate for him, because the same office is persecuting Christians right now and freedom fighters. It's a designated in a province of Alberta under the leadership of Daniel Smith, a special Gestapo unit that is hunting down political dissidents and Christians, and people are completely oblivious to what is happening. So I have been attending Derek Reimer's time. Of course, we did rallies outside prison when he was illegally detained over there multiple times for bogus charges. And then last Monday, our church came to support Derek Reimer. The crown prosecutor hates me. Again, he's from the same unit that Stephen Johnston is, the same crown prosecutor that lied to the people during the Quds 4, Quds Trio, my case about the whole Quds, colluding with RCMP, lying to the judges, hiding information from the public and from the judges. That's the same unit. When he saw me, he hates me so much, he said to the judge, that he wants me out of the courtroom because he's not capable of doing his job while I'm there. And that's the second time that he did this. So imagine a crown prosecutor, and I'm sitting over there. There are sheriffs. You cannot talk during the proceedings. I mean, I have been charged over 360 times, over 120 court cases. I know how to behave in front of the judge. You got no option. You got to zip, and you gotta listen to the nonsense most of the time, like during the Derek Reimer's trial, when a lawyer Hapner asks the crown prosecutor's witness to tell if that was a male or a female, and she was not able to do it. She was so confused, she didn't want to say that was a male or a female because she doesn't know, and she doesn't want to mispronounce those crazy people. So going back to the courts, he hates me and says, I want this man to be kicked out. And he points at another pastor, so two pastors attending Derek's trial and a worship leader. And he points at the two pastors and says, I want them out. And you know what the judge did? He says, out. So I stood up and I said, can I address the court? I mean, this is not justice. You didn't ask me why. What happened? I've done nothing wrong. And he says, that's justice. Out. I said, that's not justice. This is not justice. And he was ready to find me in contempt. So I had to go. He was pointing at the sheriff. So I was evicted. I was kicked out from the court proceedings because they don't want witnesses. They don't want a man like me telling you how crooked the system is. This is not a justice. This is a show trial that I remember growing up behind the Iron Curtain. That's exactly what I remember seeing, during the Soviet occupation of Poland. Then he turns to another pastor and he says, you're out too. And he says, like, why? He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. Well, you were smiling. Well, that's true. He said he was smiling when the witness couldn't tell if that was a male or a female. So he smiled because this is a tragicomedy. I mean, literally, this is a Greek tragicomedy. You gotta laugh or you go insane in the head because you're dealing with insane people. We used to help people like this. Now they're ruling over us. So the judge says, you find this entertaining? He says, yes, I do. Then you gotta leave the room. So two pastors off the proceedings. Then they turned to the worship leader. He had a t-shirt they didn't like. He had a hat they didn't like. And boom, off he goes as well, kicked out from the proceedings. And you know what is the most crazy thing in this story? That there is, my friends, nothing. Are you listening to me? There is nothing that we can do about this. Zero. The judges have their own, they're like the kings in their own castle, and they can exclude you for no reason whatsoever. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about this. So this is Canada today. And I have been warning Canadians since 2005. So that's 21 years. I have been warning Canadians about what is happening when the Canadian authorities, with the mayor at that time, Dave Branconia, and the police came and confiscated our Bibles because they said that we are illegally distributing printed material. They arrested me because I was giving free goods and services. Of course, that's the soup kitchen. I was feeding the poor that no one else wanted to feed. So I was arrested. And then 2006, if you remember, I was arrested for publicly reading Bible because they said people get offended when you read the Bible. No amplification, no speakers, just to 6 of my parishioners, reading from Psalms. I was arrested, charged with 7 criminal charges, faced a year of imprisonment. Since then, I became very active, warning Canadian people about what's happening. And now it's worse than ever. But at least during that era, in the 2000s, the conservatives were still trying to be conservative, at least on paper. Now we are dealing with the same entity. They all are the same. I always say to the people, if they didn't march with us during the greatest test in the history of this country, they do not qualify to be your representatives. But I am in minority, unfortunately, guys. Not many people want to hear a Polish immigrant with an accent that is screaming, yelling, this is a repetition of history. I've seen this movie before. You must change the script or else. Well, they think we're crazy. They think that immigrants that escape totalitarian regimes do not know what they are talking about. And the Canadians that were born here, going hockey and Tim Hortons and golfing and all that stuff, know better if it comes to this issue. That's why we are in this trouble. And this trouble will not go away. This will not go away. I'm telling you, this will not go away unless we, the people, take back what's rightfully ours, which is our country.
Hang on one second, if I can, Arthur. I want to interrupt you. What do you think, Stefanos? Maybe this judge should be recused from this appeal.
You need grounds for that, so you have to. This is why I say research. But you've said so many things, Arthur. So I wanted to jump in, but I let you go. You brought up about the parenting rights of Smith, the bill she wants to bring in, but the doctor can override you. Guess what? Guess where she gets those pieces of that act from? She got it from Kathleen Wynne's Co-Parenting Act in Ontario, where the government is co-parenting your child. All they do is change the title. They have the same type of stuff. The doctors overrule the parents, but I don't know if the one in Alberta is the same or not. But there's a little twist in this one where you say that your kid is, if they're telling you it's a boy and you say, no, you're a girl, or vice versa, you go to jail. Your kid gets apprehended from you. You go to jail, and the government, taxpayers, pay for all the puberty blockers, the transition surgery, everything, and the parents are screwed sitting in prison. So, the other thing you said about how long this has been going on, it was even going on even further than that. When I was in I was in grade 5, there was an activist judge that ruled child porn was art. And so they gave them the out on that. And so they didn't get the jail, they didn't get convicted, nothing. And then they turn around and somebody overturned that ruling, thank God. And now there's an activist who just keeps getting charged on purpose for it and keeps trying to do every piece of whatever he can to challenge it. And here's a headline I'm going to read to you. Judge allows convicted pedophile access to son. So, and this was in 2014. He was sexually exploiting the child and everything, but they gave him custody access, not just access, but they gave him custody access to the son. This is 2014. So it's been going on even when I was a little kid in grade 5. It's been going on continually. We're seeing it constantly. One province will mimic another. They might make a slight modification, like the title. Sex ed curriculum is a convicted pedophile. What the hell was his name? Levin. Benjamin Levin. That's it. Benjamin Levin. That's a convicted pedophile. He wrote the Sex Education Act for Ontario. So you see how this is all going hand in hand and being helped along by certain judges, by, certain things they're doing by the politicians. They're all involved in it. I've been saying it over and over and over. There is I'll bring it back to Robert Land. Why doesn't the PC party Ford, Oosterhoff, and Calandra, the education minister, make it a requirement for private schools to do criminal background checks and for the teachers to be licensed? It's not going to eliminate that, but it'll eliminate the obvious monsters that we had. So, you know, they were all convicted pedophiles and violent offenders, all convicted. You know, Somalia affair, convicted. All of these guys. So we had everything from pedophiles to murderers to drug dealers to you name it, violent criminals. They won't stop it. They want to be serving your children, our children, up on a platter to these freaking predators. And in a lot of cases, if you do some digging, you'll find they're involved in it themselves. So, you know, you're absolutely right, Arthur. I just wanted to point those couple of points out there that you had brought up. I just wanted to let you know in case you didn't know, but it's there in our viewers, so they know.
Yeah, you know, when you look at our story, when you look at my story and the amount of cases, I mean, I think I broke some kind of a Guinness record. I've never met a man that received more tickets than I, over 360 citations, and some of them worth millions of dollars. So it's not like, you know, $50 here and there. Some of the proceedings I was facing millions of dollars in penalties because they wanted to bankrupt me. They wanted to destroy me. That's the agenda. They want to destroy those that have a voice and are not afraid to speak up. And, you know, of course, the COVID era was a perfect example of what they were willing to do. I mean, they broke every law in the country. The government did. And the media, of course, supported them. So I find it fascinating that during the truck convoy, I was the first one to be arrested. So think about it, because that's not the story that many people know. Think about it. They would go and arrest a pastor a week or 10 days before they went and started to arrest the truckers. Why? You have to ask yourself that question. Why would they go after the clergy? Why would they go after the pastors? Because the pastors, if you're a real one, I'm not talking about the fake ones. I'm not talking about, you know, business pastors. I'm talking about the real deal, those that were called to preach the gospel. We are a voice of sanity, truth, and we refuse to compromise, and we are not for sale. Again, they offered me $2 million to sell my faith and Canadians, and I refused because Artur Pawlowski is not for sale. Why? Because I was already bought by the precious blood of Jesus. So you cannot sell something that you do not own. But they don't understand that concept because in their world, everyone is for sale. In their world, either they got goods on you or you're for sale or both, right? That's their word. So when they come to me, and they did, again, I told you about 10 different meetings coming from the conservative government trying to either bribe me or blackmail me or scare me. The last one was, I was told I will be assassinated. That Gordon Krinky, the crooked judge in the province of Alberta, Gordon Krinky, he is bought and paid for, I was told, and it has been decided that you're going to be assassinated in prison. So that's the tactics of the conservative government. That's the tactics of corrupted government. So it doesn't matter of the name. And when I look at the Canadians and they're cheering and screaming, Pierre Poilievre is the savior of Canada and Daniel Smith is the savior of Alberta, I just, you know, maybe this will be offensive to you, but I look at this and like, are you that stupid? Are you that stupid? You seriously, you're that dumb? Completely blind and deaf and dumb, and you don't know what's really going on? I guess that's the case.
That's what the media does.
And, you know, but again, Ed, who watches propaganda? I mean, seriously, you have to brain dead or brainless to watch propaganda. I never watch their filth unless I want to know what the filth is saying so I can tell the people the truth. So if you see me watching propaganda, it's for the purposes of education. I will watch it so I can tell the people, look what they are lying about. So you should know that the propaganda is spinning this and saying that, and you should pay attention to what the next pitch is going to be. But I don't watch it for any other reason. Like, why would I waste a second unless it's part of my job again to educate people, to warn the people. Why would I spend a second of my precious time to watch bloody liars? Why would I do that? They're liars. And why can I say that? Because look what they've done to us in the past few years. Safe and effective was their mantra. They were bowing to it like the golden image of Nebuchadnezzar, and everyone had to bow to it. I was warning people. I went to prison for Canadians, warning them, don't take it, don't do it. But again, going back to why they attacked the clergy, the pastors that were willing to stand up for their God, for humanity, for our rights, because they were scared. Because historically speaking, people, clergy of influence, can rise up the moral standards of the population, and that's exactly what I was trying to do. I was
That's why they
troubling.
came after you. That's exactly why they came after you.
They got scared. I'm telling you. We started with 7 people on the streets of Calgary. By the time I was arrested, so a few years in the COVID, we had 20,000 people every week, 15 to 20,000 people every week marching. I was all over the place. I was traveling all over this country. I was doing church services at the Supreme Court steps. I would do church services, the government buildings. I would rally, I would march. We did everything. I did everything I could to awaken the masses. And then they made their choice and they re-elected the same monster in the province of Alberta that did this to them. That's the part I don't get it. I don't understand, why would you vote for the same government that did this to you? Well, but they did it. The snake changed its head. The whole body remained intact, and they think now they are ahead of the game. And look at us today. Look at us. And I'm telling you, they're going to blame Donald Trump for their misfortune. They will not be capable of even understanding what I'm saying, that this is on you people. You did this. Because if I was the premier of Alberta, we would have the best deal with the United States of America in the history of this country. I have a great relationship with Americans, and I understand the notion of be good to your neighbors. Well, look what is happening. The bad big Donald Trump is the problem of our economy and this and that. Listen, Carney destroys the Bank of England. He comes to Canada, works for the son of the Castro, tries to destroy Canadian Bank, didn't quite succeed, so he moves to United States, New York. He moves the billions, trillions of dollars to New York out of Canada. And then he is selected, because Don Kijusov, he was not elected. He gets selected by the globalists, and now he is finishing the job. That's what we are witnessing. He's finishing the job. He's finishing Canada. He's finishing Canadians. And this will not end. This will never end until you, the viewers, the people, will say enough is enough. And that's what I said in Coutts. I was not that good at what I said. At least I never really liked it. People say that this was the best speech ever. Well, I particularly didn't like. I don't like myself, yelling and screaming and doing all those things. I prefer peace of my house. But I saw that no one else is really rising up, and I received a phone call, and I was asked to come, and the phone call was very disturbing. He says, "Pastor, can you come and cheer us up, because there are police officers dressed in black pointing machine guns at our children playing street hockey, and it's very intimidating. We're losing heart." So I decided to go. But what did I say? What did I say that triggered them so much and scared them so much? I said, there is more of us than them. There is more of us than them. There is more of the sane people than the insane people. Also, you don't want to do this. You don't want to rise up, stand up for yourself. Do it for your children, right? If you don't want to do it for yourself, fine. Do it for the kids.
Okay, I gotta interrupt here. This whole COVID thing was based on fear. And the thing about fear is when people are in fear, they don't think logically. They're trying to survive. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're just thinking about the here and now, and it paralyzes a lot of people. And that's
Yep.
why they brought you in, right?
Don't
Did you agree?
don't forget that there's also the aspect of the UN agenda is being pushed here, the dumbing down of the population. That's the other thing. They've been dumbed down. This is where the propaganda, this is from the media, the school system teaching the kids all of this garbage.
Yeah,
So
think about it. Just on this topic, conservative government is going to fix Canadian problems. They're the best, and this and that. I've heard it all, and I just saw, and I really encourage you to watch this documentary. It's done by Jason Levine, a great man, a very patriotic and loving human being. He did this documentary called "The Shot." The Shot. So because we are friends and I know how it feels when no one supports your work. So I always try to support my friends, and I will attend, and I will come, and I'll spread the word so more people would come. So I attended the screening of this movie twice now. Every single time I'm watching it, I'm crying. But the movie is about what the government, the media, the Pfizer's, the Modernas, all those demons did to our population and specifically to the children. This is a story of a young kid. The father tells the story. This young kid was a hockey player, 17 years old, and they took one because, of course, you remember they didn't allow him to play, and that was his lifeline. That was his everything, and he takes it, and then later he drops dead right in the house while he was sleeping. You know, can you imagine the tragedy? So the story goes on and explains everything, and it's a very heartbreaking story. It's very hard to watch, especially for a man like me, because I get upset, I get angry, because I know who did this. I know the players, how wicked and evil those monsters are. They are monsters. They are beasts. So
hang on. Have you ever heard of Reimer Fulmick?
no.
Reimer Fulmick is a lawyer. He's a lawyer licensed in the States and in Germany, and he went after Volkswagen many years ago, class action lawsuit, and he's the one that exposed all the problems with the diesel and the emissions. If I got my story straight. Anyways, Volkswagen lost a lot of money, a lot of clout because of his court case. Now he's been going after the likes of Burla, CEO of Pfizer, and a bunch of other garbage. I think even Bill Gates was named in his lawsuit. He's been sitting in a German jail now for over a year and a half. Him, and then they went and they arrested the other lawyer that was working with him on the case. So how's he going to prosecute these guys when he's rotting in a German jail? Still hasn't had a bail review.
Yeah.
Year and a half.
This is the tactic. The tactic is to shut us up, either bribe us, blackmail us, scare us, keep your mouth shut, or something bad will happen to you. That's where you're dealing with monsters. You're dealing with beasts. But going back to the shot, the story is absolutely heartbreaking. The kid dies, other kids are dying, and of course, millions of people around the world drop dead because of what those politicians did to them. They're bloody murders. But then we're going back to the province of Alberta.
Hang on. It gets worse. The politicians knew that these shots were going to harm people before they let them go. They knew.
Yeah. So now going back to the province of Alberta, because, I live here, so I hear the nonsense all the time, especially from the freedom community about the premier and the conservative government. Do you know that 2 years ago, my friends, doctors, were asked, even more than that, now almost 3 years, they were asked to go and just kind of scrutinize the effect of the jobs on the population. And so they did. There was a panel of different, highly esteemed doctors. I mean, we're not talking about, any doctors. They are the best of the best. They're virologists. They are, people that actually know what they're talking about. And they came back to the government, to Daniel Smith, with their fundings. I don't know if you read the findings, but it says specifically stop the shots, stop the jobs immediately, stop them. But if you don't want to stop them, at least stop them for children and elderly because they are dying. Stop them, at least for the children and elderly. And you know, the hero of Alberta, the savior of Alberta, Danielle Smith, she's sitting on this document for over 2 years. Let this sink in. This is the savior. This is how the freedom people, how the conservatives and the Christians are viewing this person. So she's the best of the best in Canada. She's sitting on this document for 2 years, knowing that the shots are murdering her people, harming their children, her children in the province of Alberta. She represents them, and murdering the elderly. What do you think she did? Did she stop the job?
No, and she also didn't she criminalize ivermectin too? That's the other thing.
Yeah, so what she did with William Mackey is she unleashed hell on him and his family, including death threats and imprisonment for many years. And effectively, she drove him away from Canada. He is now living in Florida, opening his clinic in Florida. He is the most successful cancer doctor in Canada. And the hero of Alberta, Danielle Smith, did everything in her power to drive him away from Canada. So he's right now with his family in Florida, USA, and he's doing his best to help as many people as possible because our government is actively murdering cancer patients and not just cancer patients. So going back to the shot, 2 years, she knows what this thing, this biological weapon, is doing to humans and children. And to this day, her recommendation, because you got to remember, she's the boss of Alberta. So she controls the Minister of Health, Minister of Justice. She has power. Don't believe the lies that people are actually doing everything in their power to believe that she has no power. There's nothing she can do. If that's the case, resign, quit. If you have no power, why you're doing what you're doing? Obviously, your position is nothing burger. So go and do something else. It's nonsense. She has she has the majority government. She can pass bills. She has all kinds of tools at her disposal to fix Alberta, to bring protections. To this day, in the province of Alberta, our children are jabbed 6 months young, and the recommendation from her government is every 3 months COVID vaccine for children. When she knows this is killing children, this is destroying their lives and murdering elderly. So
didn't she also keep the ministers and stuff, the same people from the previous government that were so bad? Didn't she keep them same people to be her ministers too, and her thing? And she says, I have no power to do anything, but here she is separating Alberta from Canada. That's a lot of power.
She moved certain ministers around.
No, Ed, she's not separating Alberta from Canada. This is a nonsense. This is a political theater.
That's right.
You know, this is not going to happen. Don't kid yourself. She is opposing. She actually went on television and she said, I will do everything in my power to stop the independence. She said that in front of the cameras. So the referendum, people need to understand, because the movement is huge, just like during the truck convoy. Movement is huge, especially in Alberta. People are sick and tired of this tyranny, especially coming from Quebec and Ontario. So they want out. And I sympathize with that. I was a leader of the Independence Party of Alberta. So I do sympathize with all of that. However, what is happening right now, people want the referendum on this question. So she realizes that there's so many people that are upset. So she says, okay, you want the referendum? I'm going to give you one. So about 2 months ago, or so, she brings a referendum. There is going to be a referendum about everything else except the question of independence. That's Danielle Smith. You got to remember, Danielle Smith is a great con. She's a great con artist. She will smile. She will love you. She will say what you want to hear, and then she will go to the opposite group and do exactly the same thing. It's like a high call girl. You know, she will satisfy every client for her own benefit. That's the premier of Alberta. So she says, you want a referendum? I'm going to give you one. But she excludes the number one question that people want answered to. And I think she will not be able to get away with this because the number of people that want a referendum on independence is huge. So I think she will be, by the law, she will be forced to include that in the ballot. However, I don't know if you know the news. The news is just from today, yesterday. The movement is already attacked by the police. There are investigations going on. They are going after the Centurial Project and David Parker and other people that are involved in the referendum and independence movement.
And that has been suspended. Now a judge ordered it suspended. So there you go.
Yeah, and you know, I said that when this whole thing started. I sympathize with you. I love the idea of independence. I advocated for this idea when I was the leader of the Independence Party. I traveled across the province of Alberta, educating people on freedoms and independence and what good this would bring. And I'm not talking about separation from Canada. I'm talking about independence from Ontario and Quebec, which is two different things. And, you know, I said when they kicked me out as a leader of the Independence Party and this whole craziness happened, and, you know, I kind of said, okay, you people, at this moment, you're beyond salvation. Only God can help you here. And I kind of stepped back. I said to the movement, I said, I do believe what you're trying to achieve is good. You want freedom from the tyrants. However, you're doing it in the wrong way. You put trust and faith in a system that failed us for decades. What we need is God in the middle of this. If you bring God, just like the United States of America did, so MAGA movement was so successful because they were not shining away from God, from Jesus. I'm telling you, I traveled for 4 years advocating for the MAGA movement, for Donald Trump. I was educating people about communism and socialism. I did my best to educate people what's happening globally right now, that the enemy is not approaching, is not at the gate, enemies within. So everywhere I traveled, there was always prayer. There were clergy involved. There was God being spoken. The politicians, including Donald Trump, like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He is the best president in a history of the country right now, of the republic, if it comes to protecting Christians and advocating for Christianity. I mean, he is rededicating the country in just a few days back to God, you know, nation under God. So we have to understand that when God comes in, the moment we bring God back into our society, back into our country, he steps in with his power, with his strength. The movement in Alberta wants to win with Ottawa, with Quebec, and with the globalists, with their own minds, with their own wisdom. And I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. Simple as that. It's not going to happen. And I said that at the very beginning last year. I said they're going to find a way to attack you in courts. They will find a crooked judge that will destroy you, will go after you financially, will put this whole thing and entangled in a court system for many years to come, and you will go nowhere. You will get frustrated, you will lose the funds and the support, and people will get depressed. And that's exactly what is happening right now. So again, we're going back to many Canadians don't want to listen to immigrants because they think they know better. But we come from hell. We come from environments that were identical to what we are observing right now. And we're just simply saying to you, warning you, this is a repetition of history. Wake up. We are like the alarm clock that is screaming left and right, wake up. Are you awake yet or not? So we are in a deep trouble.
What do we do about it? What does every Canadian do about it? And before we go there, I got to warn you about one thing. It's easier to believe a convenient lie than an inconvenient truth.
Yes.
And that's the problem we have with the majority of Canadians.
Yes. You know, Goebbels, which was the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler, he had this saying, propaganda, propaganda. What matters just propaganda. So in the end of the day, what they're relying on is your apathy, your indifference. I don't care. It's not my problem. It's happening in Alberta. It's not happening. You know, you're just it's not my problem. It's not my business attitude. But in the end of the day, it is your business because they're not just coming after us. And when I was arrested and attacked in 2005, so that's 21 years in the court system already, I warned the people. And I said, listen, they came for me. Be sure of it. They're going to come for you as well. During the COVID craziness, I was yelling and screaming. Why, guys, do you think I was yelling and screaming? Because I have no other means. I have no other tools at my disposal. I can yell and scream and call them names, trying to get a reaction from the population. Do you see what is happening? Do you see what they're doing? That's why I call them Gestapo. That's why I call them Nazis, communists, socialists, because that's exactly what they are. So the remedy is quite simple, actually. Solidarity movement in Poland showed the whole world how it's done. It's done peacefully, and it's done by the masses. The moment the masses come together and they refuse to cooperate with the tyrants, it's over for the tyrants. And it's very simple. Stop cooperating with them. Stop working for them. And if the masses would say enough is enough, like I told them during the COVID era, I said to them, give me enough Canadians and I will give you back your liberty. I'll give you back your prosperity. But they have chosen the Conservative government. They did the same thing in Ontario, which I don't get it. Ford is the biggest mafia I have ever seen. And that tells you everything because I'm from communism hell, but I have never seen a bigger mafia than Ford in Ontario. I mean, the guy is evil. He is just plain evil.
The problem is people here haven't lived through that. Canada, life's been pretty good over the last 50, 60 years. Currently, the people that are alive have done quite well, except for the last two generations, and they're starting to hurt.
Well, Ed, their hardship is coming. My wife would say it's already here. Canadians are hurting. And how do I know that? Because we feed so many poor people. We still have soup kitchen. We feed the poor 3 times a week. So if you want to see what we're doing, go to our channels and support us if you can. streetchurch.ca, street, because we are on the streets, streetchurch.ca, and you will be able to see the lineups of hurting people. I mean, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So in a way, people will be awakened by experiencing hardship. And that's an unfortunate thing, that people have to go through hardship to actually realize what is being done to them. And I just don't see any other way. I mean, I travel and I talk to people, and I just don't see an awakening, if you will. I don't see a revival. I don't even see a willingness to change their ways. Everywhere I go is Smith is going to fix our problems. Look what she said. It's so good. Yeah, those people are great con artists. They will tell you a lot of good things. I agree. Some things they say are amazing. But look at their track records. Or let me ask you this question, a very simple question. Is your life better with Doug Ford right now than it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? Why not? I mean, he promised it's going to be better. Why it's not? And then I asked the same thing here in the province of Alberta. Is your life better with Danielle Smith as the premier for the past 4 years? No. Everyone says no. Well, then what are you going to do about it? Oh, we're going to vote for Pierre Poilievre. He's going to fix our problems. Well, then I guess you need to die, unless you need to hurt, unless you need to lose your properties, because that's exactly what's coming your way. Foreclosures, you're going to lose your properties, you're going to lose your purchasing power. We already pay 55% in taxes, and this is just the beginning. They have absolutely no intention of stopping. So unfortunately, people don't want to listen to a man like me, and I had to come, to peace with this, to be at peace with this, to realize, okay, there is really not much else I can do except I can prepare myself, I can prepare the loved ones, I can prepare my parishioners, the people that are around me, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are collaborating with farmers. We are preparing ourselves for financial hardships. We are building a community of like-minded individuals. So we're building that. We're doing this as we speak right now. Like-minded individuals that understand what's going on. For the rest of the people, sorry, I just don't see much hope unless you're willing to change your ways. So if you want to save Canada, change your ways, or you're going to fall. And the people that think that Trump is going to come and invade Canada, guys, it's not going to happen unless China would walk in, or Russia. Then yes, then I would say Trump will have to take over Canada because for security reasons. But other than that, he's going to allow Canada to go further and further down the drain because he has focus on America. You got to remember, Donald Trump is the president of United States of America. His best interest is not Canadians. His best interest is focused on making American lives better, not Canadian lives. We got crooks and traitors in Parliament and at our legislature buildings, and they don't care about Canada, Canadians, and the future for our children. So we got two types of governments: the government that is hostile to the Canadian people, that's our own government, and the government that is working for the American people. And that's why some of his decisions are going to hurt Canadians, because he's not the president of Canada, he's the president of the United States. So, I mean, come on. Trump is not coming to the rescue at this moment. I hope he would, but it's not going to happen.
Won't happen. The American economy, $39 trillion of debt. America's in big trouble. And then you got the derivative scandal that's going to take down the banks. You got the COMEX is going to be destroyed by the price of silver and the fact that you can't even get silver. There's so many problems in the States. It's unbelievable. And
You're missing the wild card, Ed.
what's wild card?
They profit like crazy off of war, and they got it going.
That's true. And as far as China's already here in big numbers. We just don't know it or see it. We know there's Chinese police stations. I was talking to a guy that came from China as a child. He doesn't want to go on camera. What does that tell you?
Yeah. So again, we are in a big trouble. Only God can save us in this from this situation. I pray and I hope the Canadians will stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's not going to happen. You know, if you punch yourself in the face, it will hurt every single time. And that's exactly what Canadians are doing to themselves. They're punching their own nose. It's bleeding, but they keep doing it over and over again. And they say, like, why it's hurting so much? Well, because you're stupid. Stop punching your own nose and it will stop bleeding and will stop hurting. Don't vote for the same people over and over again, expecting different results. Ditch the Conservatives, ditch the Liberals, ditch the NDP, and find a new party. You don't have to like them. Anyone at this moment would do a better job than the traitors that we have in parliament. I always say my dog would do a better job than all of those professional politicians. Why I say that? Because my dog doesn't wake up in the morning thinking how I can hurt, humans. You feed the dog, and the dog is a happy camper. You pet the dog, it's all fine. But those politicians are greedy beasts. They are never satisfied. We keep feeding them, and they always want more and more and more. And they will take more and more and more because they think that you're stupid and you're going to vote for them anyway. I've heard that from the conservatives. They go,
I seen it myself, Art. I just seen it actually just minutes ago. They're like, I support Polyev no matter what, and I'm like,
yeah,
dear Lord. And
yeah,
evil, there you can't use that line that I've heard like you have. We got to choose the lesser of two evils. No, evil is evil. Period. There is no lesser.
yeah, 100% right. Especially if you're a Christian, how can you vote? Okay, put aside everything. Let's just focus on Christianity. If you're a real Christian, if you're fake, I get it. Everything goes. I mean, whatever. But if you're a real Christian, can you? How can you vote for a man that publicly states my government, when elected, will keep slaughtering babies without restrictions? Will keep doing it. And he's proud of it. He says it publicly and he's proud of it. And yet I know so many Christians that are supporting Daniel Smith actively on their Facebook pages. Everywhere you look, it's Daniel or Pierre Polyev. And they are believing that that's the God's choice for their country. So we're dealing with a heavy delusion. We're dealing with people that have lost their minds. I don't know what happened. Maybe because they're spraying air with metals and it clouds their minds. I just don't understand. Maybe this is a spiritual situation that they are looking. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they cannot even comprehend what we are communicating. That could be the case. In final thoughts, I would just say to those that are listening and see what's going on, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself because the ride is going to be very rough for Canadians in a very near future. So get ready for the ride. Buckle up because it's going to be crazy. And create a community of like-minded individuals that when crazy things will start happen, you have a community that can support each other. I remember many years ago I said that there is coming a time that Canadians will not be able to afford steaks. And I remember people were laughing at me because, especially in Alberta, we pretty much sleep on cows. They're everywhere. There's so many cows everywhere. Now I would go to Costco and I do this every time right now. I'll just stand over there and watch people at the steaks counter. And most of the people look at the price and walk. They leave, they don't buy. Because for 3 steaks, you got to pay $100. So if you have a family, of 5 or 6, that's $200-300 just for the meat plus other things. Who can afford stuff like this? Maybe once a month, maybe. But the poorer families cannot even afford that. It's just too expensive. So I see people, and I could tell they would love to have that steak, but they put it back and they move to a section with the cheaper meat.
True or false? Hang on. Question for you. True or false? Back in Soviet, communist Poland, were there any politicians that could not afford to eat steak?
No, politicians had everything. You got to remember, under communism, 50,000 communists rule over 36 or 7 million Poles with the iron fist. Those people, the way they operate, they will tell you one thing, but they always do the opposite. So they are telling you, we have to go through this season of hardship, but that message is not for them. That message is for you. You're going to go through a hardship, but we are well, protected. How can I make that statements in Canada? Well, look what it was happening for the past 6 years. We Canadians are hurting. People have less and less, but the politicians
civil servants and politicians aren't hurting.
no, because they give themselves raise all the time. Every year they give themselves a raise, but the people don't get that option. So we pay more and receive less. They pay less because they have the means to get it, and they get more. That's the game of politics. That's why they believe, and they truly believe that they are the elites and you're the peasants, you're the slaves.
Well, I like to call them parasites, and yes, we are the slaves. Thank
Well,
you for coming on.
Ed, politics. Politics. They are the parasites.
Thank you for coming on, Hart. Always a pleasure. People
Thanks
share
for
this out.
coming. Nice to see you again, Arthur. Thanks for the information.
People
Thank you
share
so
this out. You know, we're getting shadow banned like crazy. The first thing lost in a war is the truth. Share this out. People need to know. That's we can't do it. We're trying. We're on so many different platforms. We're getting shadow banned like crazy. Even my dog agrees. See you guys later.